Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to take the official tech docs for the OpenAI API and turn them into a super practical, step-by-step guide. We're here to demystify prompt engineering and give you the real-world tools you need to get exactly what you want from these incredibly powerful models. All right, let's start with the big idea here. What even is prompt engineering? At its core, it's really the art and science of talking to an AI. It's the difference between just throwing a request out there and hoping for the best and actually designing a conversation to get a great result every single time. So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the absolute basics, then build up layer by layer. We'll cover picking the right model, giving commands that the AI actually listens to, and then we'll get into some really cool advanced techniques to make your work powerful and, way more efficient. First things first, let's make our very first API call. This is where the magic really starts, your first actual conversation with the model. The whole interaction is actually beautifully simple. It just comes down to these three things. You write an instruction, your code sends it off, and the model sends something back. That's it. That's the core loop for everything we're about to do. And just look at the code. What's so cool is how consistent it is, right? Doesn't matter if you're using Python, JavaScript, or just a curl command. The basic idea is exactly the same. You just have to name a model and give it your input text. And this is what you get back. That simple one-line request comes back with this wonderfully creative and totally coherent sentence. The model did exactly what we asked. How cool is that? So sending a prompt is just step one. Your first big strategic choice is deciding which model gets that prompt. And this is super important because not all models are the same, and your choice is going to have a huge impact on your results, your costs, and even how fast you get an answer. So you're basically looking at a trade-off. On one side, you've got these heavy-duty reasoning models. They're amazing for really complex multi-step problems, but they're a little slower and they cost more. Then, on the other side, you've got models that are just built for speed and efficiency. They're super fast, really smart, and way more cost-effective for most everyday tasks. So, if you're ever kind of stuck and not sure where to start, the documentation has a great rule of thumb. Just start with GPT-4.1. It really hits that sweet spot. A fantastic balance of brain power, speed, and cost for most things you'll want to do. Okay, so we've sent a prompt. Now let's talk about taking charge. So far, we've just been asking the model for stuff. In this section, we're going to learn how to direct it. We're moving from making a request to giving a command. And you've got two main tools to do this. First, there's the instructions parameter. Think of this like a global rule for the whole chat. A command like, hey, always talk like a pirate. Then, for more control, you can use message roles, which let you set up a more structured conversation with different levels of authority. Now, you really have to pay attention to the hierarchy here. A developer message has the highest authority. Its rules will always win out over anything a user message says. And that's incredibly powerful, because it means you, the developer, have the final say on how the model behaves. There's a brilliant way to think about this. The developer message is like when you define a function in code. You're setting up the permanent logic, the rules. The user message is like calling that function with specific inputs. You're just providing the data for those rules to work on. All right, so now you can direct the model and get predictable results. That's great. Let's make it efficient. Instead of writing the same instructions in your code over and over again, you can create these awesome reusable templates that you can just call whenever you need them. And the process is so simple but so powerful. In the dashboard, you just create a master prompt using these little placeholders, like, say, customer name. Then in your code, you just refer to that prompt's ID and pass in the actual value for that placeholder. This keeps your prompt logic completely separate from your app's code, which is a lifesaver for updates. Okay, time to level up. Let's dive into some of the more advanced techniques. This is where we learn how to structure our prompts to handle really complex jobs with a ton of precision and clarity. A really well-crafted developer prompt isn't just a jumble of commands. It usually has these four key parts, and typically in this order. First, you define the AI's identity, its persona. Then you give it clear instructions, the rules. After that, you provide examples of what you want. And finally, you give it any external context it might need. And here's what that looks like in the real world. See those markdown headers like #identity? That formatting is so important. It doesn't just make it easier for you to read, it clearly signals to the model the different parts of your command. Now, one of the most powerful techniques you can use in that structure is something called few-shot learning. Basically, instead of doing a bunch of complicated retraining, you can often just show the model what you want by putting a few perfect examples of inputs and outputs right inside the prompt itself. For instance, say you wanted to build a sentiment analyzer. You could literally just show the model these 3 examples. By seeing a positive, a neutral, and a negative review paired with the right label, the model just gets it. It learns the pattern and can start classifying any new review you throw at it. Wow, we have covered a ton of ground, right? From that very first API call all the way to advanced prompt structures. So let's wrap this up, summarize the key things to remember, and talk about how you can actually start using all these new skills. Okay, let's put it all together. When you use message rules for control, structure your prompts with those clear sections, use templates to stay efficient, and guide the model with a few good examples, you gain a ridiculous amount of power. You're not just hoping for good results anymore, you are engineering reliable, consistent, high-quality output every time. We've just walked through the entire foundational toolkit of a prompt engineer, turning what can be confusing documentation into a really practical set of skills. So I guess the only question left is, now that you have the tools, what are you going to build first?